Hello and welcome to my review of the new Boss RC-300 Loopstation. For those of you who are not in the know, the RC-300 is the upgrade to its previous iteration, the RC-50. Now, what makes this different to the other loop stations in the range is this you could call the Rolls-Royce of loop stations, insofar as it has 3 stereo loop channels to work with, over 3 hours worth of loop time on board, and inbuilt audio effects to implement with your loops. Now, the first thing that might strike you about the new RC-300 is it's got a foot pedal. Previous loop stations, none of them had a foot pedal. You can use this to alter the special effects, the audio effects in the unit. And so, you know, for example, you can use it to change the depth of the flange or phaser effect, or if you're using a pitch shifter, you can kind of use it as a wah. Again, getting the inbuilt effects out of the way, they're nothing to write home about. Not sure if that many people would even use them. They're there. They're a bit fiddly to configure. You have to bend down and, you know, press a few buttons to access them. You know, switching through the various banks of effects is fiddly. You know, not as easy as using the effects on the RC-30, which was just a matter of scrolling through a number of pre-programmed ones. You have more depth here for the effects, but you know, unless you know what you want to use, if you were making adjustments on the fly or in live performance, you're going to be caught short because you'd have to bend down and, you know, fiddle around in the dark. It's not intuitive. You know, of course, with practice it will become second nature, but you know, it's not something that you could just dial in and make changes to, you know, on the fly. The unit itself is, you know, it follows the same kind of construction as the RC-50. It's sturdy. It's a weighty pedal. It's slightly deeper, longer, higher than the RC-50. Again, to accommodate the volume pedal. And yeah, I mean, I like the way that the 3 stereo tracks are laid out now. You've got a record play, so I'm just looking down at the unit on the floor as I'm speaking. You've got a record dub play function button, and what I've noticed about this pedal is it does seem to be just slightly more responsive than the RC-50. Of course, it could be that I've just spent all that money, and so my brain is telling me that this is new gear and it's more responsive. But yeah, it did feel, you know, just a little bit more fluid. Again, this is only a tiny amount more fluid. It's nothing, not a great radical departure. What also you've got 3 sliders to control the volume of each stereo track. On the RC-50 you had dials to control the volume, so you could do rudimentary fade outs, and again with this you can use the sliders to fade out your loops, or you could program them to fade out as on the end. But what they've got is they've got a little sticky notch at the halfway mark, you know, just to catch. So if you do try and do a very nice smooth volume out, it catches in the middle. There's not a lot you can do. I guess you can practice, but you can't get that kind of nice slight, you know, smooth action. Maybe I'm being a bit of a pedant here. Maybe I need to practice more. I like the way the new pedal's laid out with everything. Again, editing is, you know, again with a lot of Roland/Boss pedals, you do have to work at it. You know, it's not, I wouldn't call it intuitive, which is a great shame. You know, on the foot pedals, you know, a few knobs and a few buttons and you're away. But with this, you do have to dig deep. You do have to refer to the manual. It's got USB connectivity as well, so you can back stuff up and put the stuff in. And there's plenty of inputs. I think it's got XLR input and line in and everything. You know, so you've got phantom power as well, so you can use a powered microphone. In terms of audio quality, it sounds really good. Again, the RC-50 sounded really good. It's comparable to that. It doesn't colour the sound in any way. Again, if you dig deep, you can actually alter the input and output of each track, so you can record one track to be louder on the input, and and adjust the volumes inside the actual unit, which I thought was rather clever. If you're using a very quiet source, for example, sometimes you have a pedal or something that's a little bit quieter, you can actually tweak the sensitivity inside the patches, which I thought was really neat. But yeah, I mean, other than that, there's no great departure from the RC-50. Yeah, you get more memory. I think the RC-50 only had 20 minutes of memory to play with, which isn't a great deal of time, whereas this gives you 3 hours. So instantly, that is a good selling point. The bundled special audio effects, I mean, I could live without them. It's not something that I might use. Again, because they are buried deep in the interface. If you do, you do want to find an effect and tweak it, you really do have to work at it and then write it to the patch. Which, for me, It's not instinctive. It's not something that appeals to me in my workflow, if you understand me. But saying that, I mean, it is the ultimate loop station. It is pretty much got everything there. But the good thing is because this has come out, fanboys like me will be offloading their RC-50s and RC-30s, and it gives you the chance to pick up an RC-50 cheap from eBay, which is what I'd probably recommend you to do, because unless you want the big foot pedal and you want the audio effects and the extra time, if you can live with 20 minutes of looping time, then the RC-50 will serve you just as well as this. This isn't that radical a departure. I know they're very much a similar beast. This has just been given a few steroids. But yeah, I mean, it's I think again, these things are very expensive. The thing about the loop stations and any looping pedal, really, my big argument is they all do seem to be rather expensive, and this weighs in a whopping £400. But thankfully, I sold my RC-50 for a good price on eBay before I bought this. But yeah, so yeah, that's my review of the RC-300. It's the best loop pedal you can get. If you wanted to have a band in the box, it's good for that. I don't tend to. I mean, I know what's going to happen. There's a lot of you going to be asking, how would it operate in a live environment? I tend to use it as a sketch pad for ambient music or things like that. More esoteric, not traditional structured songs. I don't know how this would fit in. I think some of you may find it a bit limiting with that. Switching from bank to bank. I've not actually tried doing that. I've just been using the banks as a sketch pad. So you might want to go into your local music store and try it out first. That's always my advice for anyone. Don't listen to me. I'm just giving my opinion for my needs, and my needs are subjective. An objective overview is very difficult to have in this. I find having objective attitude is very difficult when you're using musical equipment, because your experience and what you draw from an instrument could be very different from someone else. So go along, try it out. It is the best, but whether or not it'll be the best one for you, that's for you to decide. My name's been Darren Locke. You've been listening to me blabber on about the Boss RC-300 loop station, and I give it a solid 4 out of 5. I mark knocked off for those effects. They're not very usable for me, and the volume pedal at the end, it's not as useful as it looks. Okay, catch you on the flip side.